Okay, so our last speaker for the day is Rick Priest from the Free University in Amsterdam. And he's going to talk to us about doubt and faith.
All right, thanks very much. Thanks for the invitation to speak at this conference. First time East and West meet in my life, and it's a philosophy conference, so that's great. I love it so far. This being the end of the day, and it's being a really warm room, and there haven't been many talks, I'll try to keep it both short and fascinating. Try to do it within 40 minutes or so, 35 maybe. Okay, so there's a handout. Does everyone have a handout? It's 2 pages, 4-page numbers, so 1 to 4. That should be it. Okay. Well, as you all know, analytic philosophy has paid attention to several propositional attitudes. Knowledge has received much attention, as well as what is necessary for knowledge, which is epistemic justification, for a very long time. During the last decade or so, attention has been paid to further propositional attitudes, such as trust, faith, hope, and others. It was not entirely neglected in the past, but attention has increased for those. But there are still a few that have hardly received any philosophical attention, just a little. And among those is doubt. What I'm going to do today is to explore what it is, what doubt is, what doubt amounts to. I'm going to see whether a unified account of doubt can be provided. That's the aim of my talk. Why does it matter? Why should we do so? Let me briefly mention 4 reasons. First, doubt is everywhere, and it's very important in our lives. So we doubt, for instance, that we should give them our money to this particular organization. We doubt the future of a friendship we have. We doubt whether we should quit our job, and so on. So it plays an important role in our lives. Second, from a philosophical point of view, doubt raises many conceptual questions. So there is doubt that something is the case, doubt whether something is the case. We can be in doubt about something. We can have doubts about something, right? So are these all the same thing? Does one entail the other, or is there one prime sort of doubt? So lots of philosophical questions, intriguing questions, I take it. Third, in the philosophy of law, there is this notion of something as being established beyond a reasonable doubt. What is that beyond a reasonable doubt? It's not that clear. And so finally, to make an understatement, the notion of doubt plays a crucial role in several philosophical debates. So, for instance, there is, of course, the idea that we cannot have... Should we close the window? I'm not sure. Yeah. Right. Now I'll have to make it even more interesting. All right, so there's the idea that we are skeptical, we should be skeptical when we can't have knowledge of the external world. So we should be in doubt or have doubts about certain things about the external world. And the second one is the relation between faith and doubt. So some people claim that faith and doubt are mutually exclusive. Some people say they're compatible, and still other people say that faith actually entails certain doubts. And I'll mention advocates of those positions later on. And this is true for religious faith, but one could make similar points for secular faith, right? So one can also have faith in one's spouse, or faith in democracy, faith in the Scottish people, or faith in lots of things other than God or what the church teaches or some such thing. All right, so that's why I think it's relevant. What's the structure of what I'm going to do? First, I'm going to show that 2 people who've written something on doubt are at least incomplete, if not mistaken. Second, we'll have a short look at usage of the word doubt, how it's actually used, and then we'll turn to various kinds of doubts, namely what I call propositional doubt, being in doubt, and having doubts. And finally, we turn to the relation between faith and doubt. So that's the project. Okay, so first, two people on doubt. The first one of them is Charles Peirce. So it's not entirely clear whether he's talking about methodological doubt, that is, doubt one voluntarily engages in, such as in scientific inquiry, or everyday doubts, so doubts that just come and go and that are hard to control. But in any case, what he says about doubts is the following. He says, doubting that P entails that one neither believes nor disbelieves that P. And he says a doubt has a certain affective or existential component to it. And here's a quote that illustrates that idea. Doubt is an uneasy and dissatisfied state, and this is the quote is on the handout. Doubt is an uneasy and dissatisfied state from which we struggle to free ourselves and pass into the state of belief. While the latter is a calm and satisfactory state which we do not wish to avoid, or to change to believe in anything else, yet for all that, doubt essentially involves a struggle to escape it. The irritation of doubt causes a struggle to attain a state of belief. And then the final thing he says about it is that doubt has an external origin. So it starts by something that comes from outside the human being. Well, very briefly, 3 reasons why I don't find this convincing. Maybe we typically try to rid ourselves of our doubts, but this is not always the case. Say, take a teenager who grows up in a religious community, a conservative community. She may actually enjoy her doubts and cultivate them without trying to rid herself of them. Second, I don't think doubts always come with negative emotions. I may doubt someone's testimony without feeling any kind of negative emotion, or any emotion at all, in fact, towards that person, or towards what she says. And finally, I doubt whether doubts require any sorts of external origin. So, for instance, I may doubt whether I should go to the office today because I don't feel very well. Right, so it's purely internal, the origin. So I don't find this account entirely convincing, but we'll see there's some element of truth in it, to which I will return later on. Second, Paul Thagard claims that it's often not very helpful to define concepts such as doubt in terms of necessary and sufficient conditions, and proposes to analyze it in terms of stereotypical properties. So an attitude like doubt typically, normally satisfies the following conditions, and then follow these 5 conditions. So that's what he does. So here we go. 1, someone else makes a claim about P. 2, one notices that P is incoherent with the other beliefs one holds. 3, one cares about P because it's relevant to one's goals. 4, one feels emotions related to P. And 5, the emotions are caused by a combination of the claim, the incoherence, and the relevance of P. Again, I'm not entirely convinced by this. I'm not going to discuss all these 5 conditions, but just to mention, one of them. So take the first one. Someone else makes a claim about P. As I said, I might feel dizzy, not too well, so doubt whether I should go to the office. That doesn't involve a claim on somebody else's part. And second, and even more importantly, these 5 conditions are far from jointly sufficient. So take, for instance, the proposition that my spouse committed a murder. So that is a proposition that satisfies these conditions. But someone might claim your spouse committed a murder. That's incoherent with my beliefs, fortunately. I care about it because it's relevant to my goals, right? It would make a significant difference if my spouse committed a murder. I feel emotions. I mean, the very prospect makes me frightened. I mean, that would be a terrible thing. And those are caused by the combination of the claim, the incoherence, and the relevance, right? So it satisfies all the conditions. Yet, if someone claims your spouse committed a murder, I don't doubt for a second that my spouse committed a murder. Right? I don't doubt it merely because it meets these conditions. So I think this account as well is unconvincing. But we'll see later on that there is some element of truth, whatever precisely an element of truth may be in it. Okay, so let's move to how the word doubt is used. So the Oxford English Dictionary will tell you that it's used in 4 different ways. So let's briefly discuss those. First, it can be used as a verb with a subordinate clause that starts with that, whether, or if. Here are some examples. This is on the top of page 2. A, I doubt that we are the only ones here in the universe. That's just a sentence, not my view. What you make, I don't know. B, we doubt whether he is going to make it to the party. C, she doubts if she will ever be able to return to Kyoto. Do I pronounce it correctly? Awkward silence. Did I pronounce it correctly? Kyoto? Yeah? Okay. Okay, good. So let's call this propositional doubt. Why? Because these are all attitudes towards a particular proposition. So doubt that, doubt whether, and doubt if. Second, there is doubt with an accusative noun. So doubting X. Here are some examples. D, E, F. I doubt my ability to finish the task in time. I doubt the value of marriage. Or I doubt my colleague's sincerity. Again, these are just sentences. Now, these are attitudes towards some entity, such as my colleague, for instance. Maybe they're reducible to some propositional attitude, but whether or not that's the case, I think they do entail an attitude towards the proposition. So, for instance, if I doubt my colleague's sincerity, then I doubt that my colleague is sincere. I doubt whether my colleague is sincere. Something along those lines, right? So it entails propositional doubt, whether or not it's reducible to that. Third, there is doubt as a master noun. And when we use it that way, it's preceded by the preposition in and often followed by about or as to whether. So here are some examples, starting with G. Blake is clearly in doubt. She's in doubt about her friendship with Mary. Mark is in doubt as to whether he should propose to Cindy. And J, he's in doubt about whether he should have called. And I will call this kind of doubt in doubt. Now, it seems if one is in doubt about something, one is always, if one is in doubt, one is always in doubt about something. So if Blake is clearly in doubt, then I think the context will normally indicate what Blake is in doubt about, right? If one said Blake is in doubt, clearly so. Well, and then I think normally the context will indicate what he's in doubt about, or at least roughly. Similarly with being in doubt about one's friendship with Mary, if one is in doubt about one's friendship with Mary, one will doubt such propositions as it's, whether it's a good friendship, that the friendship will last, that the friendship is mutual or equal or some such thing, right? So again, this kind of doubt also seems to entail propositional doubt. And finally, the fourth variety of doubt I call accusative doubt. So there, doubt is used as an accusative count noun. Here are 2 examples. Charlotte harbors some doubts about her feelings for Tim. And L, I have no doubt that Greg has improved since last season. Well, again, this seems to entail certain propositional doubt because one adopts the attitude of doubt towards a proposition. So if one has doubts about one's feelings for Tim, one doubts whether those feelings are the right feelings one should have, or whether Tim is a proper friend, or some such thing. So the point being, all varieties of doubt seem to entail certain propositional doubts, which is why my focus will be on propositional doubt. I will say something about the other varieties as well, but my focus will be on propositional doubt. Are we good so far? Okay. Let's move on to propositional doubt then. And I'll start with doubt that, and then I'll turn to doubt whether. So first, doubt that. The first point I want to make about doubt that is that doubt that seems to exclude belief and also seems to exclude disbelief. By belief, I mean something like try to keep this brief. Something like thinking that P, or thinking that something is the case, or thinking that something is true, and thinking with assent. And that might be done occurrently, or it might be done tacitly, right, or dispositionally. So one need not consciously think about it. And I take it that that requires some minimal degree of credence in the relevant proposition. All right, I think that should do for this paper. I mean, belief is such a big topic, but I think this should do. All right, so why do I take it to exclude both belief and disbelief? Here are two reasons. First, if you believe that something is the case, then in normal circumstances you will have a tendency to affirm that that thing is the case. I say in normal circumstances, you need to add a few ceteris paribus clauses, right? But in normal circumstances, you'll be willing to affirm that thing. But if you doubt that something is the case, you won't have that tendency, except in abnormal circumstances, right? You will qualify it in all sorts of ways, or not be willing to assert it at all. Second, let me see. So second, if you believe something, if you believe that P, then normally you're willing to act on P. Again, normally with all the ceteris paribus clauses, but normally you're willing to act on it. So if I believe that coffee is on the 7th floor, I will normally be willing to act on that belief. So if I want coffee, I will go to the 7th floor. However, if I doubt that that is the case, then I won't have that tendency, or at least I will ask someone or inquire or check, and not automatically and unthinkingly act upon it. So the tendencies are quite different. So that seems to me a good reason to think that doubt that P entails that one does not believe P and one does not disbelieve P. So disbelief just being believed and not P. All right. Second, I take it, and I'm less sure about this one, so I would like to hear your opinion about this. That it requires suspension of judgment. And whether it does so, I think, depends on how much suspension of judgment requires, how strong a notion it is. So Jane Friedman has this fairly strong notion of suspension of judgment, where you've settled upon something in a certain way. That may be too much, but someone who once in her life considers a proposition, it seems to me, and then moves on, it seems to me, can't doubt that proposition. So it should be the case that one has considered it, one neither believes it, one also doesn't disbelieve it, and one ends up suspending judgment on it. As we'll see, that's not yet sufficient for doubt, but it's at least necessary. Right? So one has a certain attitude towards the proposition. It's not as if one has never considered it. All right, what else is necessary? Well, so in the full paper there are a few proposals that I discuss and reject. But I'll just go straight to my own proposal for the sake of time, which is that one doubts that P just in case one has an inclination to disbelieve that P, so to believe that not P. And this may be what Peirce had in mind when he spoke of an irritation. So what is it to be inclined to disbelieve P? Well, I take it that one has such an inclination just in case one has a credence that just falls short of belief, or just falls short of disbelief, but is fairly close to it. Right, so it's different from me suspending judgment on whether the number of stars is even or odd. Right, I don't have any credence in that proposition or in its negatives. I'm pretty much, those are on a par with me, right? Whereas with things that I doubt, I have a fairly high credence, but it just falls short of disbelief in case I doubt that P. I think this has two virtues, at least. This account doesn't require any meta-attitude, so I don't need to have any beliefs about, say, my evidence or how my attitude relates to my evidence. It's just a matter of credence. And also it leaves room for irrational doubt, because one might doubt that P, while one's evidence overwhelmingly indicates that P or that not P, right? And I think that should be the case. An account should allow for the possibility of irrational doubt. All right. So that's a suggestion as to how we should understand the idea of doubting that P. What about doubt whether P? Is that the same? Now, I think language is slightly loose here, so we don't always use it very precisely and accurately. But I think when we do aim at precision, I think they tend to be used slightly differently. But please correct me if you think this is not the case. So I think in case we doubt whether P, our credence in not P is not as high as in the case of doubt that P. So if you doubt that that is the case, then you're very close to disbelieving that that's the case. You almost think that that's false. I doubt that that's the case. Whereas if you doubt whether that's the case, you don't have such a strong inclination to disbelieve it. In fact, it seems to me that if you doubt whether P, you have also some inclination to believe it. So I doubt whether that's the case. So in that case, you have some inclination to believe it, and you have some inclination to disbelieve it. Anyway, that's a suggestion, and I think the word doubt, if, is used even more loosely, so it can be used in the same way as doubt that, or as doubt whether. All right, so let's move on to a second kind of doubt, namely being in doubt about something. What about being in doubt? It seems to me that if we say someone is in doubt about something, we mean that a person is in a certain state that is more continuously phenomenologically present than a mere instance of doubt that. So compare the difference between, well, he doubts that God exists, and he is in doubt about whether God exists. If you're in doubt about something, right? I'm in doubt about whether I should buy that present for my mother-in-law. I'm in doubt about it. That strongly indicates that one thinks about it every now and then. It bothers one. So it's much more continuously phenomenologically present than doubt that. Right? If you doubt that something is the case, you might consider it once, and then a few months later you might consider it again, and so on. Second, it seems to me that if you're in doubt about something, it has a certain affective or existential impact. That's kind of a big word maybe, but at least one cares about it. I might doubt that something is the case without caring about it, but if I'm in doubt about it, then it seems I do care at least somewhat whether it's true. So it's more of an impact on one. And so maybe that's what Taggart had in mind. Finally, if you're in doubt about something, you're on the fence about something. You're in doubt about it. It's not that you're entirely on one side of the fence. You're on the fence, so you don't know. So you have some credence in P, you have some credence in not P. You don't know what to think. So you're torn. You're on the fence. Let's move on to having doubts. Before I draw some conclusions. So having doubts is an interesting phenomenon. So if one has doubts, if one says someone has doubt, then the word doubt is used as a counter noun. So one has fewer or more doubts. Now one might wonder whether it's okay to say one has 2 or 3 doubts. I'm not sure about that. But here's one reason to think that it's okay to say such a thing. So I can approach someone after a lecture and then say to that person, I thought that was a terrific talk, but I've got 2 doubts about it. Not everybody is happy with the suggestion, but and anyway, nothing hangs on it, but it seems to me one could say such a thing. At least one could say one has more or fewer doubts about something. So I can have more doubts about this particular theory than about that one. Or this person may have more doubts about this theory than this other person has. Second, it seems to me that accusative doubt is compatible with belief. And here's as with disbelief. And here are a few sentences that illustrate why I think that's the case. This being 2016, I thought, yes, let's use some, how do you call them, emoticons, in order to show whether the sentence, as far as I can see, is okay or not. So M says, I believe that I'll be in time for the conference, but I doubt that I will. That just doesn't seem right. M prime, I believe that I will be in time for the conference, but I doubt whether I will. That sounds problematic to me as well. And prime, I believe that I'll be in time for the conference, but I'm in doubt about whether I will. It just doesn't sound natural at all. But then look at this one. M prime, triple prime. I believe that I'll be in time for the conference, but I have some doubts about whether I will. It seems to me that one is not that problematic at all. So one can believe something and yet have some doubts about it. I don't think there's any contradiction involved in saying something along those lines. Why is that the case? Well, in order to see why that's the case, we need to ask ourselves what doubts are. Right? What's the nature of doubts? And in the literature, we find two views, although spelled out in not more than one sentence or two. One by Dan Howard Schneider and one by Jonathan Schellenberg. So let me just read those aloud. These are the quotations on page 3 under Y. So first, Daniel Howard Schneider, he says, who wants to have doubts about whether P is for one to have what appear to one to be grounds to believe not P, and as a result for one to be at least somewhat inclined to disbelieve P. So doubts about P are reasons to think that P is false. Jonathan Schellenberg, however, says doubts or uncertainties are disruptive and typically troubling feelings caused by one's awareness of objections to a proposition one once confidently believed, and the consequent sense that it may not after all be true. So here, doubts are certain feelings one has, certain psychological states one is in. So not the reasons or grounds for doubting, but certain troubling feelings one has. Here are two examples that illustrate what these two guys have in mind, as far as I can see. And I find the position about global warming that you advocate extremely interesting, but here are a couple of doubts I have about it. I have great difficulty trusting my daughter ever since she said it to me. I have these nagging doubts in my head. And in fact, both sentences seem fine to me. So I'd like to suggest that the word doubt is just used ambiguously. Sometimes it's used to point to the grounds or reasons for one's being in this state of doubt, and at other times it's the psychological state of having these troubling feelings. And in both cases, well, it's easy to see why having doubt is compatible with believing that P and also with disbelieving that P. For believing that P and disbelieving that P is perfectly compatible with having some grounds to think that P is false. Right? You can believe P and still think that there's some reason to think that it's false. And it's also compatible with having certain feelings, certain troubling feelings about P. So that's why it seems to me having doubts is compatible with belief and disbelief. So what we've seen so far is that there are these various phenomena that are all related in a certain way, but that should not be identified with each other. So doubt that P, doubt whether P, being in doubt about P or being in doubt as to whether P, and having doubts about P. Right? So clearly they are closely related to each other, but they are not identical to each other. In order to see how this makes a difference, I would like to apply it to one particular topic, which happens to be from the philosophy of religion. But as I said, you can pick secular faith as well, so or any other kind of faith. So as I said, there are three views that we find in the literature. Some people claim that doubt and faith are compatible with each other, so they can go together. There are some people Bill Alston, Bob Audi, David Holly, Daniel Snyder, John Kvanvik, and Daniel McCoy. Then there are those who say that the two are incompatible. So if you, well, I'm not sure to what exactly which terminology they use. I could give the quotes if you like, but if you have doubts about, say, the existence of God, then you can't really have faith that God exists. So these people claim that the two are incompatible. Thomas Aquinas is one of them, and John Henry Newman, I take it, is one other person who defends this view. And finally, interestingly, there's the entailment view, which says that genuine faith always comes with doubt. So you don't truly have faith if you don't have doubts. All right, so we find those three positions. And what I'm going to do is illustrate how I think the distinctions that I made make clear to what extent each of these views is tenable or not. First, I'm going to focus on the proposition that God exists. If you take other religious propositions, I don't know, some proposition regarding the incarnation of Christ, or whether or not the Bible is inspired, then clearly faith and doubt are compatible if we pick the right propositions, right? So you can have faith in God, or faith that God exists, and simultaneously doubt that the Bible is divinely inspired, or doubt that Christ was both human and divine. You see, so those things go together rather well. So it only becomes a problem if we focus on one and the same proposition, such as the proposition that God exists. Only then it becomes a problem. So I'm going to focus on the proposition that God exists, because plausibly it can be regarded as the core proposition of the monotheistic religious traditions. All right. Well, before we can say something about the relation between the two, there's of course the question, what is faith? And unfortunately, that question is as difficult to answer as the question of what doubt is. And I'm not going to bother you with another paper on faith today, but I can't avoid saying a word on it. So what I'll do is just this. I'll take something from Bob Audi's work on this point. So I think he distinguishes 8 varieties of faith. So I'm just going to mention the 4 most important ones, briefly define them, and then show what follows from it. All right, so first is doxastic faith. One is doxastic faith that P, just in case one believes that P is true, or the case, and one has a certain positive attitude towards P. Second, there is acceptant faith. Acceptant faith is a situation in which one accepts that P, so one decides to take it for granted in one's practical and theoretical reasoning that P is the case, and one has a certain positive attitude towards it. So in the background here is Jonathan Cohen's distinction between belief and acceptance in his 1992 book on belief and acceptance. Is that right? 1992, I think. Third is fiducial faith. One is fiducial faith that P, just in case one trusts that P. And finally, there is attitudinal faith, which is faith in someone or something, such as faith in God, or faith in democracy, or some such thing. And that implies that one has certain positive, effective attitudes towards that thing. So one can't have faith in democracy without, say, desiring democracy or thinking that democracy is a good thing. And similarly with God, if one has faith in God, one has a certain positive attitude towards God. Now, what I won't be doing is spelling it out and arguing for each of these C's and I's that you will find in the scheme. But C stands for compatible and I for incompatible. And I could explain it in more detail if you like. But as you'll see, if I'm right about each of these, then certain kinds of doubt are compatible with certain kinds of faith, whereas others aren't. And in certain cases, it depends on one's exact account, for instance, of what trust is, in the case of fiducial faith. So in the end, the result is rather mixed. So strictly speaking, each of the 3 views is that I mentioned is false, because there's compatibility in some cases and incompatibility in other cases. But many varieties of faith are compatible with many varieties of doubt. As far as I can see, from none of the nature of none of these kinds of faith and the nature of none of these kinds of doubt, it follows that faith entails doubt whatsoever. I mean, it might be a psychological fact, an empirical, contingent fact, that every person with faith has certain doubt, but it's not a conceptual truth about the nature of faith and the nature of doubt. Time for a conclusion. I think we ought to distinguish between doubting acts, propositional doubts, being in doubt about something, and having doubts about something. There is not one thing involved. There are several things involved. The core idea has been that when it comes to propositional doubt, that entails that one neither believes nor disbelieves that P, but that one has certain credences that, for instance, in the case of believe that P, just fall short of disbelieve that P. As to the relationship between doubt and faith, one should ask 3 questions in order to answer the question whether the two are compatible. Namely, which propositions exactly do we have in mind, such as the proposition that God exists or some other proposition. Second, which of these kinds of doubt is involved. And third, which kind of faith is involved. And one can't really answer the question whether the two are compatible if one hasn't first answered these questions. I think that's what I wanted to say for today, really. Yes, that's it. Thank you very much.